For the past decade, Eduard Habsburg has served as Hungary's ambassador to the Holy See. Working with both Pope Francis and Pope Leo XIV, he represented his country to the Vatican and the Vatican to his country. It was an easy task when they saw eye to eye, and far more challenging when their views differed.
I learned very quickly that with Pope Francis, you had to read exactly what he was saying.
He is one of 89 ambassadors accredited to the Holy See, but what makes him stand out is his name. As a member of the Habsburg family, he comes from a centuries-old dynasty that once ruled much of Europe. And in this one-on-one interview, he explains how, growing up, he became aware of the responsibility that comes with that legacy.
An identity is offered to you, a ready-made identity. They expect the Habsburg to be somehow different.
And he tells me why his favourite Habsburg was the one who lost everything.
His Catholic faith spilled over into his work as an emperor.
We talk about what it's like being an ambassador at the heart of the Catholic Church.
If you call someone up or let your secretary call up, they will always talk to you or receive you because you're an ambassador.
Nobody will refuse you.
No, that's all very nice.
And why, after 10 years in the role, he is now stepping down.
But I've been other things before and I will be other things afterwards.
I'm Colm Flynn, and this is an interview with Ambassador Eduard Habsburg.
Your Excellency, Archduke of Austria, Ambassador to the Holy See, Eduard Habsburg, it's a pleasure to meet you again. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much.
We could sit here, Ambassador, for the rest of the day and talk about the fascinating history of your family, of the rise and the fall of the empire, of the good and the great, and sometimes the not so good. But I want to ask you about one Habsburg in particular, who you yourself have said was the biggest loser of them all, but yet he is your favorite, Emperor Karl Habsburg.
Yes, I always like to say that a Habsburg who in the eyes of the world is an absolute failure because he managed to only rule 1.5 years, lose the empire and lose the First World War. And still, if you ask the members of the Habsburg family who is their idol and their favorite Habsburg, they will all point to Blessed Emperor Karl, this quiet, friendly, smiling family father who took over the empire after an age of Franz Joseph, and then died miserably in exile 3 years later, and still is the only Habsburg who has become a blessed of the Catholic Church. And he's a great example to us. He had a few more children than I had. I only have 6, but many of my family love him very much.
Why is he your favorite? What were the qualities that he had? What kind of life did he live?
I think the wonderful thing about him is that he led a very normal life, except that his job was emperor. But that he loved his wife dearly. He was a deeply devout man. He was a friendly man, a cooperative man, a team worker. His Catholic faith spilled over into his work as an emperor. He had the first ministry for social questions in the world, I believe. And he, the moment he became emperor, began working as much as he could for peace in the terrible First World War, which had been requested by Pope Benedict XV. And because the Pope had asked for peace, he immediately engaged, and he did several runs trying to get about peace in the First World War. All of this shaped by his faith. So what I like about him is a political leader who lets his actions be shaped by his Catholic faith. I believe we should have more of these in Europe today, and the world would be a better place. At the same time, he was a wonderful father who showed his children the ropes, so to speak, who gave them the faith, who lived everything that he passed on to them. He had a beautiful and wonderful wife, whom I still met as a young boy when she was an old lady, and who deeply impressed me. And yes, we are incredibly thankful that Pope John Paul II made him a blessed, and we hope that he's going to be a saint one day.
That's incredible that he is your favorite, or the one you admire the most, although, as you say, such a short reign as emperor,
Yes.
and in the worldly sense, quite an unsuccessful reign. Was he the first one, you think, who really lived out their Catholic faith in their work and in their family life as well, to the point where he's now a blessed?
Absolutely not. I would say if there is anything that you could say for all the Habsburgs over 850 years where we interacted with European history and world history, nearly all of them were Catholic. Many of them lived their faith very, very strongly and let it influence their daily life and their work life as an emperor. A few of them didn't in most difficult times. A few of them were weak souls, as you might say. But, you know, to have such a run over 850 years is not bad for a family. So, yes, we are a Catholic family.
But for him to become blessed, what was it you think that was special about him, or that the cause has been pushed now?
I would say there are several reasons. There is a very nice story when his wife, future wife Zita, before the marriage, went on a pilgrimage to Italy and met with Pius X, Saint Pius X, and presented herself. Pius X said, so your husband is going to be the Emperor of Austria. She said, no, you're mixing me up. My husband is not going to be the Emperor. That's Franz Ferdinand. And Pius X hesitated and then said, no, your husband is going to be Emperor of Austria. And he is the gift that God gives the family for what the family has done. And when Zita came out, she said to her mother, who was also present, he must have been confused about who I was. And the mother didn't say anything. And when Franz Ferdinand was killed in Sarajevo and suddenly Karl became emperor, mother said, I always thought that he had some premonition of something happening. And what I believe is that Blessed Karl, the last of the Habsburg emperors, was the answer of God to Rudolf, the first of the Habsburg emperors that became emperor in 1273, but before that had done a grand Catholic gesture. There was a famous story that our family sort of built upon. He was riding once hunting in the forests of Switzerland, and there was a strong rain and the river was very wild. A priest couldn't cross the river because it was so wild, so Rudolf gave the priest his horse to bring the Blessed Sacrament to a dying man. And when that same priest in the evening came back and wanted to give the horse back, Rudolf said, that far be it from me to ever ride on a horse again that has carried my Lord, keep it. And the people in the area said, this is a grand and wonderful Catholic gesture. God will bless this family. And I believe that that's what Pius X meant, and that's what we believe is Blessed Karl is the thank you of God to our family.
All those centuries later.
All those centuries later.
I've heard you say before, Ambassador, that being a Habsburg, having that surname and growing up, you felt like everywhere you went in life, there was a little spotlight on you.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
What I mean is if you make an accident with your car and they might say Colm Flynn made an accident, if Eduard Habsburg makes an accident, it will be member of the Habsburg family made an accident. You know, when you are born a Habsburg and you grow up a Habsburg, an identity is offered to you, a ready-made identity. You have to think whether you want to accept it. People have certain expectations. They expect the Habsburg to be somehow different, to stand by certain principles, to behave, to dress well, to be Catholic, to marry and have lots of children. All of these things, and also to believe in monarchy, and all of this whole package is handed to you. And you have to decide, do I want to take that on? Do I want to say, no, I want to be myself. I don't want to be where I come from. And
but regardless of whether you accept it or not, the spotlight is still there, and people are still watching.
It's much easier if you accept it. And
is it easy, or is it a huge challenge to grow up with that pressure of that responsibility of carrying on that legacy?
It's easier for me because I was never in a line to the throne that I could be sort of ever become something like emperor if the monarchy ever came back. So I'm like the penultimate Habsburg. There's just my son and my brother who are behind me. I would have to slaughter an incredible amount of Habsburgs.
I heard you say before, Ambassador, in the New York Times, you said, highly unlikely, but stranger things have happened.
Yes, but still, no, it was never a great challenge. It's a nice family. It's a cool family. It's a family you can be proud of. And it's so many role models over the centuries. I wrote a book about it because I discovered so many of my ancestors were just really great people who cared for their population, who lived their faith. And therefore, no, it's an easy heritage to embrace. I was also in the lucky situation of being able to meet Otto Habsburg, the son of the last emperor, and spend a lot of time with him. And, as I told you before, Empress Zita, who was the last empress of Austria. And that was a deeply impressive moment in my young life as a child. I was very aware that I was in the presence of someone and something very different.
Wow.
So yeah, no.
Was this when you grew up in Germany?
Yes.
Why did you grow up in Germany?
Because my father, being Hungarian, his family fled from Hungary when the Russian army arrived around Budapest. They first fled and lived in Portugal. Then my father went to Switzerland and to Ireland. My father lived in Ireland for a few years, not too far away from Shannon Airport.
Yeah.
And then he married my mother and came to Germany. And that's where we were born. And
he worked in the textile industry.
Yes.
And when you were growing up as a young boy, what were you passionate about and what were you interested in?
Dinosaurs, football, reading. I read a lot. I wrote stories. I had boxes full of little notebooks with stories inside, short stories, and family. I had cousins all over the place, and wherever we traveled, we could stay with cousins, and you got to know history in a very lively way if you stay in a castle of somebody. And also, I think I was inspired to have a big family by regularly visiting one family who had 5 beautiful daughters. And it was for the first time for me to see a large family. We were 3.
Yes.
But 5 together in 2 rooms all the time, that impressed me deeply. And it always gave me this warm glow of saying a large family is something beautiful. So all of this was prepared in my childhood. And
I know for a while, a cartoonist. You wrote some movies as well. I know people like to publish that you worked on zombie films. And
yes. Only one never came about. But I was a cartoon producer.
Not yet.
Yes, we'll see. I can still pitch it to you. Very nice Austrian zombie film. I was an animated cartoon producer. I didn't draw them myself. I have absolutely no talent for drawing. But I am a great and passionate script writer. And for 10 years, I sustained my family by script writing. I also did television later on. And that goes hand in hand with Thomistic philosophy. I studied philosophy. And so I'm quite a mixture of...
Actually, I read, Ambassador, when you were studying, you worked with none other than Pope Benedict XVI, Cardinal Ratzinger.
Yes.
And he gave you some advice on your thesis as well.
Yes, he did. You did your homework. I did. He read. I interviewed him for my thesis on Thomistic philosophy and the crisis of Thomism in the 1960s, 70s. I interviewed him about Thomas Aquinas in Vatican II. And he read my thesis afterwards. He liked it. He wrote to me. And he told me that he wanted me to either make a documentary about Thomism or to write a thriller about Thomism. And then he became Pope, and I still hadn't made neither the one nor the other. and then I met him when I arrived here. I first met with Pope Francis, and then I met with Pope Benedict.
He was Pope Emeritus.
Emeritus in the gardens, and he came up to me with his little rollator, this tiny old man, and then he straightened up. He looked at me and said, "So, you're ambassador now." And then he said, "You still owe me a documentary or a thriller about Thomism." That was the first thing he said.
Wow.
I was so blown away, but I still haven't written it. I've written an outline, but it never got past that stage.
That's the one thing many people don't realize about Pope Benedict XVI was the sense of humor that he had.
Great.
That we never got to see publicly.
No. But he had a witty sense of humor. Very, very funny. I'm not going to repeat one very witty and biting remark he made about a theologian from the 70s. I'm not going to repeat it.
Okay, that'll be for the next interview. How did you become the Hungarian ambassador to the Holy See?
Now, the crazy thing is, of all the possible jobs that I could have taken, ambassador from 1 to 10 would have been on spot 13 or 14, because I had a totally wrong idea about what an ambassador is. I thought this is people who always have to smile, never allowed to say anything they believe, stand around at cocktails with glasses and always do like this. And I thought that must be the most boring job in the world. I would never be ambassador. And then I was asked through an intermediary by the Hungarian government. They were looking for an ambassador to the Holy See. And I told him, folks, first of all, I'm not your guy. I've written a zombie movie. Secondly, my Hungarian is really, really bad. I had tried to learn it in the 1990s. And if you don't use Hungarian, you lose it immediately. And then we met. And they told us, okay, then you learn Hungarian. And while I was still working for a bishop as a spokesman, I began learning Hungarian. And as I had already worked for the church, as I was already fluent in several languages, as I have a background in philosophy and a bit theology, and as I've worked with journalists for years, a few of the key elements of being an ambassador were around. And so I arrived and I had to hit the floor running here, because that was my first post and I came without preparation.
Yes, many of the ambassadors who end up in Rome, it's often at the end of their career, and it's kind of the sweet assignment to say thank you for all of the great, in some very tough places. But this was your one and only.
Yes.
You were coming in.
Yes, I came in and that was my first post as ambassador. I still remember Archbishop Gallagher told me, an ambassador shows his worth not when he's welcome, but when he's controversial and when things are difficult. And that's one of the first things that I learned about the role of ambassador, because I arrived at the moment where migrants were flooding the Balkan route in Hungary. Pope Francis was publicly saying that if you build fences against migrants, you're not a good Christian. I think it was more directed at Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But so I arrived in such an intense moment. But I had to learn really fast.
Was that a great challenge for you when Donald Trump was building his wall, Viktor Orban as well in Hungary, they were building a fence of some sort? Pope Francis publicly stated, those who build walls and put up fences, this is the work of the evil one, something to that effect. So you have yourself here in the middle, representing Hungary, representing Viktor Orban, representing the government of the country, at odds with the Holy See and with Pope Francis. How did you navigate that?
Well, first of all, I had been in Budapest and with the Order of Malta helping the migrants that went through Budapest. So I had seen the situation on the ground before I came to Rome. But days before I left for Rome, I had been in Budapest at the main station doing that. So I could speak about these topics with a bit more knowledge than other people. Secondly, I learned very quickly that with Pope Francis, you had to read exactly what he was saying. Pope Francis, in his talks, would say things like that, but he would also say things like migrants have to respect the values of a country where they arrive. He would also say a country has a right to defend its borders and its culture. And he would also say things like, the first right of a migrant is not having to start to become a migrant, but remaining at home. He would also say that. Now, people never quote that, but that is one of the key lines of the Hungarian government in our help for persecuted Christians all over the world and for humanitarian work. I try to explain. You always try to explain to the Holy See the position of Hungary and explain to Hungary the position of the Holy See. That's your job. You're sort of trying to speak in both directions.
Being a Habsburg, did that help when you came to the Vatican because of the respect for royalty, for families, for dynasties?
I would say it helped. This is one of the last places in Europe where people still appreciate historical context. And I suppose that the Vatican perhaps was ready to give me a bit more credit when I arrived, because they would assume I'm Catholic. They would assume, as a Habsburg, you never only stand for one country. I'm the Hungarian ambassador, but Habsburgs always stand for several countries. We always look across the edge of one country, and that perhaps makes me more fit to be a diplomat. And I was very generously accepted by the Holy See here, and it was the greatest 10 years of my life.
What was your relationship like with the Holy Father, Pope Francis?
Incredibly positive. But that's not really my fault. It's just that the Pope seems to always have had a nearly sentimental, deep love for Hungary. He didn't speak about that publicly. I saw it every time he met Hungarians. And then when he came 2 times to Hungary, once for the Eucharist Congress, once for an official papal visit, he began telling stories about where this love came from. And we suddenly discovered that since the 60s, he's been harboring a deep love for Hungary. And when I met him for the first time in December 2015 for my credentials, he said to me, I said, "Have you ever been to Hungary?" He said, "No, but I know everything about Hungary." I said, "How come?" And then he told me that he had been looking after a monastery of Mary Ward sisters in Buenos Aires.
Oh, wow.
And they had 3 nuns from Hungary that had fled in 1956. So he went there twice a month for confession, Holy Mass. And he said, "I've learned everything from these 3 months that I need to know about Hungary." And I said, "So what did you learn about Hungary?" And he said, "The Hungarians are good, upright and courageous people."
Wow.
And I said, "Thank you, nuns."
Yes.
And that has shaped, this is one of the things that have shaped Pope Francis' outlook on Hungary, and that make my work very easy. He was incredibly generous, and as you probably know, if you see that the Pope has a good attitude towards a country, everybody else in the Vatican feels that they should also have a good attitude.
Pope Leo XIV, have you had many interactions with him, and how do you find his papacy?
I have met him 4 times, about 6 seconds.
Really?
So those were, yes, standing in a queue and shaking hands. I'd still have to try to understand more, as we all do. He's the new guy. I'm very impressed by him. I feel a very balanced and just man who is trying to do good. And an American without seeming too American. We will see the things that he'll do. We pray for him every day. And I would say quite different from Pope Francis. But the Romans have this saying, they say, Papa Grasso, Papa Magro. Chubby Pope, Slim Pope is always like that.
You're going to miss this role.
Yes and no. I've done it for 10 years. And I think I've seen everything you can see here, including a conclave, visits by my prime minister, exciting moments. I've seen it all, I think. And yes, in a way I'm going to miss it, but also family is important. And as I say to people, I don't want to be buried in Rome. My heart is in Central Europe. Somewhere between Vienna and Budapest, and that's where I'm going to spend more time.
Why is this ambassadorship coming to an end? Is it just the end of the term? Is it something you requested, or?
I felt that 10 years is a good term. It's far longer than ambassadors usually are here. My reasons are more family reasons. I want to spend more time with my family, especially with my parents, which I had very little time to spend time with in the last 10 years. And I have the feeling it's a good moment now to go, and I will. I'm probably going to be back on and off for events, for trips, because I'm going to be ambassador at large for Hungary for family and international church organizations, which will allow the Hungarian government to send me to events at the Holy See too.
Was it a difficult decision to make, ambassador, because a role like this, so prestigious, at the center of the Catholic Church, your faith that you hold so dearly, and it almost becomes, when I talk to anyone and I mention ambassadors, the first one they mention, Ambassador Eduard Habsburg, probably the most well-known, maybe the most well-respected of all the ambassadors to the Holy See. it defines you in a way and becomes such a big part of your life.
Just to know that I've been a scriptwriter a few years ago, making do with a growing number of children, never having enough money to survive, and trying to sell your scripts, gives you an idea that everything is a phase and things end. And some people tell me that when you've been a diplomat for a few years, it's very nice to be respected. It's very nice that people say you're doing a good job. It's very nice to dress up nicely, to arrive in a car, to get out and to be welcomed in a very special way. And it's very nice if you call someone up or let your secretary call up, they will always talk to you or receive you because you're an ambassador.
Nobody will refuse you.
No, that's all very nice. But I've been other things before, and I will be other things afterwards. But I'll keep a foot in that world, so to speak, so I'm not going to totally give it up.
What is the most important thing in your life?
God, my family, that I have a book to read, but mostly God and my family. I think I would sacrifice anything for those two things. Yes, I'm married. Since 30 years. I've got 6 children. And 2 grandchildren, and that is the greatest decision I could ever make in my life.
6 beautiful children. I've had the privilege of meeting some of them in Barnum Cafe here in Rome.
Yes.
And we got chatting, and I said, "Where are you from?" "Do you know about?" "Yeah, he's my father." I was like, "How about that?" But, their heads buried in books, I might add as well.
Yes.
And your wife was with them. Teenager, the youngest is still a teenager?
We've got from 16 to 29. We've got from teenager to two married children, so we've got everything. 5 daughters, 1 son.
30 years of marriage. What's the secret to a successful and happy, long-lasting marriage?
Well, I wrote a book about that called Building a Wholesome Family in a Broken World, so I should know. Again, it may sound boring, but the building block number 1 is God. You have to find someone who shares your faith. Not just to have a Catholic stamped on some paper, but someone for whom God is the center of their life. Funny that this should be the first thing. Most people would say, she has to look smashing, he has to be rich, all of that. But my first point is always, I've got a checklist in my book where I say which are the 5 points where you can figure out whether that significant other is really your spouse for life. And point 1 is God, always God. You can marry someone who is still on a path towards God. You can even marry someone who doesn't share your faith, but it makes things so much more difficult because life will come rough at you. And men and women are so different. They share so little in the end. And if you have faith in common, you have a pole that you can cling to when the storm blows. One of you two can grab the other one, sit you in front of an icon, say, let's pray. This is something that I don't even know how people do it without that. So, God. The second point is ideas about family. I believe you have to find someone who agrees with you on wanting to have a large family. I believe large family is the greatest gift that the spouses can give it to each other, that you can give to the children, and that a family can give to the state they live in. Because I believe a society with large, numerous families is a good society. Why is this? Because around the dinner table with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 siblings, you learn all the virtues that you need to be a good member of society, a just, merciful member of society. You learn to look out for the weaker. You learn that you're not the center of the world. You learn that you are not entitled to have the latest iPhone. You learn, because if you have lots of children, you usually can't afford everything. And you learn all the important virtues for life, you learn in a large family. So what I say is, find someone who shares your faith, find someone who is ready to make sacrifices and give up career, success, and standing in society for a large family with God's help. If God gives you children, because it's not a thing that works every time, but this is the second thing. The third one is chastity. You are looking for a spouse that is chaste, trying to live chaste. This is one of the key ingredients for a lifelong happy marriage. For a lifelong happy marriage. I can say without sounding corny that I love my wife far more now than I loved her when I married her. And this is something that everyone can have in their marriage. But God, family, and chastity are the key ingredients. Then you've got two more, that's more about cultural character and all of that. But the three key ones are those.
When I got married a few months ago, my uncle, Father James, he celebrated the Mass, but he talked about walking through London once with another Spiritan beside him, and they were looking at all the young couples holding hands. And the priest said to him, the other priest, "Oh, isn't young love so beautiful? God must really love young love." And my uncle said, he does, but he loves old love even more.
Yes.
It's easy to fall in love when you're young and everything's exciting and everyone's attractive, but sustaining it and growing it
Yes.
to the future, that's the challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
Your love, you say, has grown to your wife over the
so
years?
Much. Oh, so much. So much. I would say, if you would ask her, she would probably say that too. You don't know how beautiful I find my wife, how attractive, how funny. She's the funniest person I know in the world. And it's the greatest thing in the world to go out with her. I did the right thing.
You have such a strong faith. Growing up, always easy?
Oh, no. Like the Habsburgs, I always stuck with the Catholic faith. Like the Habsburgs, I had one or two moments where it was more difficult, mostly my teenage years.
Yeah, what was it like when you were growing up? Were you always this devoted to your faith? Did you question?
Yes.
Did you stray? Did you think,
I had
what?
two parents who strongly lived the faith to me, who dragged us to Mass every Sunday, who taught us to pray the Rosary, who went on pilgrimages with us. And that was a bit difficult when between 15 and 18, between 13 and 18, for 5 years, I suddenly began to develop a little crisis in faith. It wasn't a really bad one. If it would have been bad, I would have run out and never gone to Mass again.
Yeah.
I continued going to Mass, but there was doubts about the faith. Growing up in Germany in the 1980s was not the ideal nurturing ground for faith. Doubt crept in through the skin, through the media, through everywhere, through your religion teacher in school, through every sermon. It was not a climate to develop a strong faith, and I had 5 years of doubts, of questioning, but that was good. It's good. It's good because now, when one of my children comes to me, I can answer. But after that, it was very smooth sailing, and I've had a very rich Catholic life that included very diverse things like. Now I'm more of a traditional Catholic, but I used to be in the Community Emmanuel. I did charismatic with hands raising and praying in tongues. I went to Medjugorje. I have friends in the Opus Dei, in the Dominicans, in the Jesuits, and two brothers of my grandfather were Jesuits. My brother is a Legionary of Christ. So there is a bit of everything. I really feel as a son of the Church. I love my faith, I love the papacy, I love being a Catholic, and I have to say, these last years in Rome have strengthened my faith. I know that many people say, don't go to Rome and never work around the Vatican, you lose your faith.
You lose your faith.
I had a very different experience.
Were you at points when we saw the scandals coming out, the financial scandals with the London property investment, with the sexual abuse crisis, and at some point seemed to be no end of it. At any points did it rock your foundation a bit?
No, I know that there was always sin and always mistakes and always things going wrong in the church since the beginning. Just read the gospel. But you meet so many good people here. You meet devout, good people who really give their all to help the church and to carry it here around the Holy See. Very impressive characters around the Holy See, and weaker ones, as you have everywhere. But no. This was, I would say, I almost would say usually an old dog doesn't learn new tricks, but I sort of got a sort of booster in my faith over the last years.
So what you're saying is this old dog can learn new tricks.
Absolutely.
I've read before about a beautiful ritual in the Habsburg family, when one of the emperor dies and they're brought to the cathedral, what happens?
Yes, I actually witnessed that twice, although we don't have an empire anymore in Austria, but they still did it twice more. And that was the knocking ritual you talked about. I think it's a very old ritual that comes from Baroque times. All the Habsburg emperors are buried in the Kapuziner Gruft. In the center of Vienna, it's a crypt with a steep stair leading down into the crypt. And when the emperor's coffin is being brought to the door of that stair, the master of ceremonies knocks 3 times at the door. And the voice from inside says, "Who is there?" And the master of ceremonies says, "Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary, King of Croatia," and then rattles down all the 27 titles that we have. And the voice of the monk from inside says, "We don't know him." And then he knocks again. He says, "Who is there?" And then he lists all the achievements of the emperor, which peace treaties he made, which wars he won, how often he was married, all of these things. And again the voice says, "We don't know him." And then he knocks a 3rd time. And the voice says, "Who is there?" And the master of ceremonies sees Franz Joseph, a poor sinner. And then the door opens. I think that's beautiful, not just in itself, but also as a gesture. The Habsburg emperors wanted even their death and funeral to be an encouragement and a sermon, and to show people with what attitude you should walk towards death. You're a poor sinner. You're in need of God's forgiveness, of the sacraments, and I may be an emperor, but I'm in the same needs as you are. So very, very strong.
I may be an emperor, but when it comes down to it, you and I are both the same when we're meeting our Maker.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Ambassador Eduard Habsburg, congratulations on your 10 years here in Rome representing Hungary to the Holy See, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Colm.